welcome to Laser Focus. This is the deep dive pop culture podcast from Nerdist. I'm Kyle Anderson. Thank you for listening. Folks, happy Thanksgiving, folks in the United States. Happy Thanksgiving. If you are listening to this the day it drops, then you are probably on your way to eating turkey, or perhaps you've just eaten turkey. But in any case, thank you for listening. We will, just to let you know about things going on ahead, we will be dark for a couple of weeks around Christmas and New Year's, but I didn't want to go dark a third time. So we are, in fact, doing this Thanksgiving Day episode. And it's also a second part of a two-parter. You may remember previously on Laser Focus, Clarke Wolfe came on to talk about, on Halloween, our Halloween episode, to talk about adapting horror novels and other media to film and television, and she is back. Spoilers for 1 second from now when I introduce her, on a different holiday to talk about holiday themed horror, as was plugged at the end of the last episode. So welcome back to the show, the quickest turnaround perhaps we've ever had on a returning guest, my dear friend Clarke Wolfe. Hi, Clarke.
Oh, hi, Kyle. Thank you so much for having me back. I'm honored that two of my favorite holidays, which are Halloween and Thanksgiving, I get to be the special guest for both of them. I feel so lucky.
It's pretty amazing. What do you like about Thanksgiving? Is it
Okay.
just food?
Yes,
Okay,
it
great.
is.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, obviously.
Look, so I enjoy turkey. I enjoy, and I also really enjoy, what I love about Thanksgiving is that it's a little bit lower pressure Christmas. So it's like, I've gone to many a Friendsgiving in my time. And I feel like Thanksgiving is a thing, if you do it right, I think, if you do it as intended, I suppose. The idea of like, hey, do you need a place to gather? We're all so grateful to be here, to have food, to be, whatever, counting our blessings today. So come to my house, or come with me to my friend's house, or what. It's just this more, it has, in my experience, been very communal and also a little lower pressure than some of the other winter holidays. Like, I kind of like that it's just, we're going to sit around and eat a really big meal and watch football or watch the parade, or, it's a little lower lift. Now, I will say, I was actually thinking about this before we started recording. I don't feel bad for me. Okay. I'm going to preface this with
All right.
nobody feel bad for me. I didn't have any Thanksgiving plans this year. I didn't get invited to anything. There were no Friendsgivings going around. My family lives in Atlanta on the East Coast. I'm not traveling. So, but good news for me, I'm going to the Alamo Draft House. I'm seeing Gladiator 2, and I'm eating a giant cheeseburger. So I actually feel very good about my Thanksgiving plans.
That's great.
Nobody worry. But I was thinking about how Thanksgiving used to be my favorite of the fall winter holidays that are family based, because my cousins would come, and my aunts and my uncles, and it was like a hodgepodge of people. And now they're all married and they all have children, and so Thanksgiving has slowly becoming like fewer and fewer people over the years, and so now it's just kind of like a whatever holiday for me. But I did and do really appreciate the concept of Thanksgiving as we celebrate it in a modern situation. I'm not talking about, obviously, the very problematic origins of our country,
right,
and so on and so on. I'm just talking about now, if any of that kind of resonates.
No, it does, for sure. And I was, I think one issue that I have with Thanksgiving nowadays, because we talked, you and I, off mic recently about it. Steph, my wife, and I just kind of do the just low keyest. It's the two of us in our pajamas basically all day, drinking and eating, and it's like, this is the best. So
Yes.
We've made that something really unique to us. But what drives me nuts is that it's basically, there is no Thanksgiving. It's just Christmas part one, and that drives me crazy, because Thanksgiving is its own thing, and
Yes.
there's the colors of Thanksgiving traditionally, like the more fall-ish colors, like browns and yellows and reds and things like that. and like the cornucopia. Like I do like that iconography. However, it's now you go to a store to we went to Target recently just to get Thanksgiving things, and it's just covered floor to ceiling with Christmas song or Christmas stuff. I was going to say Christmas songs, but they weren't. They were in fact playing the entirety of the Wicked soundtrack, because Wicked paid
Because that's
Target money.
Thanksgiving.
That's
That's
Thanksgiving,
great.
all right.
That makes me
So
really happy. Well, if I'm not mistaken, and audience, please correct me, and Kyle, please correct me, but I'm pretty sure that Macy's has a very strict Thanksgiving is Thanksgiving
mm,
until the day after Thanksgiving policy. And the day after Thanksgiving, we can all start celebrating Christmas.
yeah,
But we here at Macy's, we are not doing that. And I'm always like, you know what, Macy's, and also they have the Thanksgiving Day parade.
yeah,
So we
it's their
understand
thing,
their
yeah.
their vested interest, right? But if we're gonna, let's take a little bit of the cynicism out and just appreciate. Like, I really appreciate that hard line in the sand. I
Me
really
too.
appreciate that, because you do look, as a Halloween enthusiast, I could very easily, and by the way, I don't fault anybody who does this. Life is hard. Find joy where you
Of
can.
course, yes, of
But
course.
I could very easily, the day after Labor Day, start decorating for Halloween. And it could be Halloween for,
Sure.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
But I'd have to, in my own heart, like draw a line in the sand. And for me, it used to be getting through Fantastic Fest. Now I try to wait until October 1. So
sure.
October 1, I decorate wow. October 1, I decorate for Halloween. And
Mhm.
then November 1, I decorate for Thanksgiving. And then the day after Thanksgiving / December 1, it's Christmaka in my house.
Sure.
So, but you have to make you have to set boundaries, because if you don't, it all just gets overtaken by Christmas.
Yeah, and that's what they want. They want it to be overtaken by Christmas. You know, like Black Friday is now like 2 weeks, and it's like basically from last Wednesday
Yes.
to like a week after Thanksgiving is Black Friday sales and stuff like that. It's just like it's all just commerce, and that's what drives me nuts mostly about the way Christmas is celebrated, which will dovetail nicely into the way that we our discussion today. But before we get into it, so we are going to talk about holiday themed horror movies, and also, or holiday horror, I guess, in general, but also um horror or spookiness that gets you in the mood for a specific holiday that is not necessarily tied to Halloween. Obviously, Halloween gets all the praise. There actually isn't all that, or aren't all that many movies set on Halloween.
It's true.
Fewer than you'd think.
Yep.
Um, and but before we get to that, one of the other reasons Clarke is on the show is that she is making a Thanksgiving themed horror film, and it's called FIENDSGIVING, and there is a crowdfunding campaign to get it up off the ground. Clarke, would you please tell us about your film?
Oh my gosh, I would love to. So y'all, this has been a long time in the making. I am so excited about this. So I am writing and directing. And my dear friend Sam Levine, best known for Freaks and Geeks and Inglorious Bastards, is executive producing and starring in Fiendsgiving. And we are crowdfunding on IndieGoGo right now. So you can find us. You can just go to IndieGoGo and type in Fiends, FIENDS giving. And you can find our campaign. And we're crowdfunding for the opening sequence of the bigger slasher feature. It's a slasher movie. I can tell you that we are creating an original slasher killer called
Incredible.
the Gobbler. And I'm really excited to play in this sandbox. But what's cool about this campaign is that I thought a lot about the reward system. I thought about, okay, we're going to ask people to donate during the season of giving, during the holidays. It's been a tough year. Like, what can we give in exchange for people's hard-earned resources? And so the answer I came up with is, we are going to teach you how to make a movie. So when I directed my short film, A Shining Example for AMC a few years back, this was a part of the Twitch channel that I was hosting content for AMC called Fear HQ. And we actually, this idea was born out of that, where we actually live streamed from set. The actual filmmaking process for about 2 hours. So I thought to myself, okay, well, we have this live streaming technology, and also, I know that if I had this opportunity to watch somebody kind of like unfiltered, warts and all, go through the process of raising money, pre-production meetings, special effects tests, and so on, I would love that. So that's what we're doing. We're going to make our budget available for you to download. So if you want to see how much it costs, like actually costs to make a movie, what does it cost to pay people a reasonable rate? What does it cost to rent a grocery store or a grocery store set? You'll see if you visit the campaign that there are different, there are stretch goals, but the first, tier that we are raising for now is actually not the script that I want to shoot, but it is a modified version of the script I want to shoot, so that we can shoot it all in one location. But if we get to our stretch goal, then we're trying to raise so that I can add my grocery store set, which yay, and pay for a company move and all of these things. But I hope that this is educational for people, and fun. So that is the overall concept.
Yeah, it sounds awesome, and it kind of harkens back to like Project Greenlight type stuff,
Yes.
which I really enjoyed that show. That was, for those of you who don't know, it used to be on Bravo, I believe, or the IFC. I forget. I think it was Bravo actually.
Mhm.
But basically, each season was the making of a movie, and Ben Affleck and Matt Damon were executive producers, at least on the first couple. I don't know if they continued to be such, but it was basically their show, or their brainchild or whatever. But the thing about that show was, the show was great, but the movies that came from them, with the exception of Feast, which is a pretty good movie, all the other ones were like, no one remembers those. Like, I won't say no one remembers them, but
Sure.
they did not stand the test of time, let's say.
Right.
And so what's really fun about horror movies is that, first of all, they have a much longer longevity anyway than an indie kind of whatever rom-coms or whatever they made at the time. But also, those are more fun to see get made anyway.
Yes.
If you've ever been on the set, or if you've ever made like a short horror film, which I made a few in college and stuff, it's just fun because you're like, there, I don't know, there is a level. Anybody who ever heard talk about making a horror movie, and you've been on the set of some big horror movies.
Yes.
I've visited sets of bigger horror movies, and it's like, there is an energy to it that is completely different from like just a general blockbuster. I think it's because there is a passion to horror that is completely separate and like above certain other types of movies, I think.
Yeah,
Just from my
absolutely.
experience.
You're 100% right. They're a lot of fun to make. And also, look, I think going into this, being transparent of like, you want to see how this works? I'm going to actually show you how this works, which means special effects aren't going to always get it on the first go.
Yeah.
Or, casting our gobbler is going to be really interesting. Like, making sure that everybody's comfortable in stunts and that whole deal. Finding, the resources for this in the first place. Like, I love the concept of Project Greenlight, and anytime Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, and I'm not being funny, anytime they talk about the business, like they talk about the nitty gritty of the business, I find them to be so compelling and interesting and smart, because those two are real filmmakers, and they're filmmakers that wear various hats. So they have to kind of keep and they work in various genres. So they've got to keep all of this in mind as they continue to create film and television. And so, but one thing that I think is really cool about what we're doing is we're kind of doing this from the ground up. Like, there's no way that in Project Greenlight, they're not going to like, oh, they don't make their day, so they're going to release an unfinished movie. Like,
right.
What? No,
Right.
it's not a thing. Or,
Yeah.
And I also really like that the competition, there's no competition element here.
Right.
It's like golf. We're playing against ourselves, And so, but I think it's going to be really, really fun. And and So you bring up this great point, being on set, right? Because I'm an actor, and when you're an actor on set, you're exposed to very specific things. You're invited to very specific meetings or whatever. Your days on set, it's very constructed what time you're there and what you have access to. And then when you're a journalist and you're on set and you're doing a set visit, you see what the PR team wants you to see. Great. I got to tell you, I had the opportunity to shadow a feature film director this summer, and I went to everything. I was an unpaid shadow, and I just followed her around. And I went to a pre-production meeting that I had never seen before. Like it was just the AD and the whole team going scene by scene through the script and talking about their needs that day, how they're going to shoot it, blah, blah, blah. Like all these little details. I had never seen that before. So my point is that you don't know what you don't know.
Mm.
And it's embarrassing sometimes. I'm so really fortunate that this director who I shadowed, she is a friend and a colleague. So I felt comfortable coming to her and being like, listen, there is nothing that you are going to show me or teach me that I'm going to be like, this is boring. I already know this. Like, let me see everything. And she trusted me, so she did. But it was just this eye-opening experience. And so but I couldn't say that necessarily. Like if I'm going in to direct something and I want to like, oh no, I know everything. It's fine. Like you can't be like, oh, what is that exactly?
Yeah.
So I want to show people that. I want to give them confidence that they've seen this in action before.
One of my really good friends is a first AD and has been a first AD forever, like as long as I've known him. And he generally works on lower budget horror movies. Like the biggest stuff he works on are like sci-fi original movies, like that kind of like level of stuff. And he says that like it's the worst when you have a director who thinks they know everything and won't ask questions. And it's like, again, like my friend has been on millions of sets. He's worked for 15, almost 20 years just as a first AD on movies. He understands like basically how to do that stuff. And when you get somebody who just has, vanity project stuff, and it's like it's not sexy to talk about the like nuts and bolts of like hiring a crew and stuff like that. However, that is the most important part of it, because you need to have all the people in place, because it's not just like shooting something when you're in college where you can just like, I'll hold the camera and you hold the boom mic and then we'll switch and then I'll be in the frame. And it's just like, you don't have that kind of luxury on when you have people who you have to pay. Like, you have to be good at it.
And this is the thing is like I am a firm believer. I love the notion and the sort of the inspiration of like, all right, we all have iPhones, grab your buddies, get out there, you can edit on your phone, you can do all these things, like go do it. I love that, especially if you are up and coming in this business. But part of the reason why I am crowdfunding the way that I am and looking to raise at minimum $41,000, at second minimum $55,000, and then anything beyond that, the resources will absolutely have a place to go, which is all listed in the crowdfunding information on IndieGoGo. But I bring this up because we're professionals, like I've been in this business for 16 years and Sam has been in this business for literally decades.
Yeah.
And our crew are all professionals. And so, it's funny because as I was talking to a handful of people about like, okay, I want to crowdfund the opening sequence, the opening page 1 to page 10 of this slasher movie. And this is the budget. And people, not everybody, because when I told them I wanted to let people in on the process, they were like, oh, that's very cool. But when they found out that I had a budget, and they were like, well, why don't you just go make it? What do you need a budget? Like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, because I really want to make something. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? And we're professionals. I'm not saying nobody's getting rich off of this.
Right.
That's for sure. But everybody deserves to be paid, because this is not a hobby for us. This
Right.
is our job. And unfortunately, right now, our industry is at this inflection point where I mean, securing even micro budget financing, even with people that have been working for as long as we have, is still deeply challenging. And so that's part of the reason why, again, we want to give this element of total transparency, so that hopefully people have the resources. And by the way, the community, that's another part of this. We have this private Discord server where people will have access to not only us, the filmmakers, but each other. So hopefully you all can, like our backers who are interested in filmmaking, can talk to each other and hopefully, create their own things. That would be a dream come true for us if there's something actually, like another piece comes out of this. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I think it's such a fun way to do it. And it also, the thing about the budgets and like studios being kind of shy about giving, it's nowadays, it's like it either needs to be something that cost $300 million that they can potentially get $1 billion off of,
Right.
or they just kind of don't do it. Because it did used to be like, oh, we'll give this $3 million or something like that, but they just don't do that anymore. It has to be these huge, giant productions that are guaranteed, quote unquote. And so if like something underperforms, it's the worst thing in the world. Even if something makes like $200 million, which is pretty good for any movie. Oh, well, but it costs, after marketing like $600 million. So it's a huge financial failure. And it's like, why are you doing it that way then? Like,
Absolutely. It's even like, let's talk about the most obvious comparison here, which is Eli Roth's movie Thanksgiving. Like the joke is that it took 10 or 15 years from a fake trailer to get him under $10 million after Eli has established. Eli is a very well-known and very successful filmmaker, and he is working off of something that people have been clamoring for all of this time, and it only took until last year he got
yeah.
to get the movie into the theater. Are you joking? Like, it's just wild right now. It's just, it's wild. It's wild.
Yeah, I was really surprised. I mean, because like after Grindhouse came out, obviously but that was 2007, and it was
Yes.
like, oh well, I'm sure. There was rumblings like a year or so later, like, oh, they're going to actually make Thanksgiving. That's really funny, and then it was nothing, and he went on to do
Yeah.
other stuff, and you kind of go like, well, I guess they're not doing that, and then I was like shocked that it came out last year, like
And it's
because
fun.
it is
And
fun.
by the way, it did very well on not only did it do very well at the box office because Eli is a very economical filmmaker,
Sure.
but on top of that, it was a very big success on Netflix, even past November, right? So like I just, again, I don't know what it takes anymore. I don't know. I guess you have to be, well, we know what it takes, but it's,
Yeah.
it's tough.
It's very tough, and especially like, and I will say like it's heartening to see some of these kind of more interesting um titles get their fair shake on stuff like Shudder, or like there are other kind of lower quote unquote lesser known, I should say.
Yes.
Shudder's the big
Yes.
one, but streaming services. So at the very least you can get seen, but that's sort of like, I just want my film out there kind of thing. Like you're not expecting to make a profit off of stuff like that because they just don't even have the infrastructure for something like that. So it's,
Right.
it's a whole, the kind of mid-budget, you can't even call it independent anymore because basically everything's independent now.
Yeah.
But there was a time when like indie horror meant like The Evil Dead or something like that, or stuff that like J.R. Bookwalter was doing, and now it's like, oh, that like In a Violent Nature is indie technically, even though like bigger named places picked it up and stuff like that. So I don't know.
Right. Yeah,
Anyway,
it's a journey, but
Yeah.
I'm really excited to do it. And, which segues, I think, nicely into our bigger conversation. One of the things that's really interesting, why I chose Thanksgiving for the theme, is because a lot of times people will tell you like, oh, you don't want to make a Thanksgiving movie because not everyone has American Thanksgiving. Nobody knows what that is around the world. Nobody knows. And it's like, okay, but everybody knows what it's like to gather around a table with their family that they don't get along with.
Yeah.
That doesn't, whether or not you're eating turkey or you're, doing some other cultural tradition, at the end of the day, there's nothing more universal than having to sit around a table with your family that you can't stand. And so that is where Fiendsgiving is going, right? Our Sam plays the brother, Xander, this sort of douchey tech bro, and he is going to his sister's
Incredible.
Thanksgiving tomorrow, the next day. His mom is going to be there. His kind of casual girlfriend is going to be like, all these things. But and then of course the sister has just gone through a divorce, and she's super stressed out about the meal and all of this. So this is really the Thanksgiving of it all is more again about the emotion. Like Eli's movie takes place in Massachusetts, is very New England focused, is
Yeah.
really focused on like the first Thanksgiving and Black Friday and the Thanksgiving parades and all of that. And I loved it, but I can tell you I've been working on this idea for a really long time. And when I went and saw Eli's movie in the theater last year, I was a bit like, oh no, okay, I gotta really objectively look at this and make sure it's not too close. And it couldn't be more different.
Mm.
But so we are focusing more on the family tradition and the family element set at Thanksgiving, and that type of pressure. And I think those are the types of, also, by the way, like the holiday movies that I reach for, because I don't know if your audience and you can figure this out or not. I am not estranged from my family. I get along with my parents great, but like there are members of my family I do not get along with. And so anytime I am forced to participate in family holidays, I am often reaching for podcasts that please keep my podcast schedule like it normal, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so or comfort movies, whether they revolve around the holiday, whether they evoke the holiday, whether they remind me or they kind of represent, like reflect my mood sort of. I am very big into holiday or holiday adjacent movie traditions. So I'm really glad that our topic today like revolves around that, because I am a person that really relies on those things every year.
Yeah, and it's absolutely, and that's become, much more something I really need as well. My I i- in my adult life don't really do a ton of Christmas stuff with my immediate family. We just
Mm-hmm.
will sort of, we'll get together. My they used to come out here to LA. Um my grandma is immobile now, so it's tougher to get them out here. So anyway, so um what ended up happening is I would go up, drive up north, so from LA to Northern California to where
Mm-hmm.
Stephanie's family lives, and they do big, huge, giant Italian Christmas. And I tend to kind of feel like I don't, like all this like rampant happiness doesn't necessarily reflect the way I feel at this time of year. Because even as a little kid, like I was always kind of glum during Christmas,
Yeah.
the Christmas season, because you get that great day when you're a kid of opening all the presents, and then you have just the rest of the month,
Yes.
and you're
Yes.
like, oh, there's a very weird feeling. So what I started doing is turning to ghost stories. And so like I
Yep.
needed, books on tape or whatever to listen to while I made the 6-hour drive. And so I would often do like audiobooks of ghost stories. And so ghost stories
Mm-hmm.
have become sort of my holiday tradition nowadays. And that, MR James,
Yes.
um, EF Benson, Henry James as well, like stuff like that. I will usually, even like Charles Dickens or Edgar Allan
Yes.
Poe and stuff like that, I will just listen to. And it's just a very nice thing to do, especially because that drive is often very foggy because you have to go over the mountains and stuff like that. So it just really evokes that that sense, and that has really become my like that's my vibe for the holiday season now. And once you realize that like ghost stories are sort of baked into Christmas, I think that's really become
Yes.
a you know everybody likes A Christmas Carol, but very few people realize that like that was merely one of many Christmas ghost stories that Dickens wrote. But then like just the British tradition of Christmas ghost stories goes back eons, and I find that so interesting to me. Like, and it's like similar thing, but I learned recently that in Japan, all of their horror movies come out in July and August, because that is their specific, I forget the name of the festival, but like their like um Remembrance of the Dead kind of festival
Oh,
is that.
fascinating.
And so that's why there's so many wet ghosts in in
Oh,
Japanese stuff, because
interesting.
it's so hot and humid in Japan. And so that just
Wow.
becomes like part of what ghosts are like sweaty kind of thing. So I find that culturally very interesting. And I've really kind of dug into that. But like what we were talking about in our first episode last month, like,
Yes.
there's the Haunting of Hill House and Haunting of Bly Manor, which are, one is obviously based in Shirley Jackson's book, which is New Englandy, and then all of Henry James stuff is very British. And it just kind of has the mood, like a big house with kind of foggy grounds. Like that's kind of all you need in my head. Like
That's just Christmas.
yeah, that's Christmas. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and we did talk about this on our last episode, but just to reiterate, every Christmas now, I know some people think of it as like a Halloween show because it came out at around Halloween initially on Netflix. But Mike Flanagan's The Haunting of Hill House, I now watch every Christmas because it kind of all the themes that we've been talking about with family, with turmoil, with ghosts, literal and figurative, with family history and everybody having to come together. It just feels so melancholy and it feels so cold. Mike Flanagan's Haunting of Hill House is a cold, not emotionally cold, but it takes place when it is cold and rainy. Like the atmosphere is mostly very chilled, and that feels so Christmassy to me. And in fact, it's interesting. So with Haunting of Bly Manor, I remember that Netflix released that around, it was 2020 because it was during the height of the pandemic. And they released it Halloween of 2020. And when I watched it and I got to the end, I was like, oh, this is a gothic romance. They did the exact same thing that they did with Crimson Peak.
Yeah.
Why did you because it's ghosts, you're putting this out at Halloween? This is a Valentine's Day show. February is also cold and dark and kind of gloomy, especially if you are a single person or you are heartbroken or whatever it is. And so those two, I know we're going to focus mostly on Christmas in our conversation today, but I actually watch Crimson Peak every Valentine's Day. That is a Valentine's Day movie to me.
That's so fascinating. And I think that's like, there is an element of like what most people don't nowadays have the conception of, or I should say modern viewers. Like I will say people who have not done research. That sounds super douchey. But anyway, the Gothic tradition does not only mean ghosts and monsters and stuff like that. It's literally like Wuthering Heights is a Gothic romance. Like it's a specific time period, but it's also like an emotional height, like heightening. And there is a lot of like Gothic romance, I think, and like the idea that death cannot separate this true love or whatever like that, or there's bad feelings surrounding romance and things like that. Crimson Peak is an excellent choice for a Valentine's Day horror movie, and Bly Manor is too. I will say that like Bly Manor is maybe the least successful of the Mike Flanagan.
I agree with that.
But I still really like it. I've watched it a few times, just because there's so much there to kind of dig into, and then I subsequently listened to the Henry James like book of ghost stories, and then went back and was like, oh, okay, these are ones I didn't recognize. Like I knew Turn of the Screw, but I didn't really know like some of the other like shorter stories. And it's I think it's a tougher sell. Like Haunting of Hill House is obviously a book, and he took a lot of liberties with that, but The Fall of the House of Usher is all the Poe. So if you just know Poe in general, like you can kind of get all that stuff, and they're all the really famous ones.
Yes.
So,
and it felt a little bit with Bly Manor too, like, and probably unfairly, that team was tasked with
I'm holding it up so Clarke can see the ghost stories of Henry James.
Yeah. Oh, I love. But yeah, Bly Manor felt a little bit like it was tasked with replicating something that Haunting of Hill House did, and that is an unfair standard to hold anything to.
Totally.
And I think that the idea that surely Mike Flanagan was having to prove himself, and he was doing this super ambitious thing with Haunting of Hill House. And then it's like, okay, well, we need it to be, you know, we need you to like, I can see the powers that be kind of being like, all right, well, we need you to do that again because you, and then so we need it to be scary. And Mike clearly is not interested in repeating himself.
Yeah.
And so instead of doing this family melodrama that is absolutely heartbreaking, instead he does a gothic romance that is absolutely heartbreaking. But again, if you're selling this as ghosts and scary at Halloween, you're not going to you're going to disappoint the audiences, which again is sort of similar to what happened with Crimson Peak. And I actually the start of my tradition of watching it at Valentine's Day was way back when, before COVID, when Alamo Drafthouse, Los Angeles, the downtown location, opened up. They were doing Terror Tuesdays and they had guest programmers. And so I got to guest program something and I got to do Crimson Peak at Valentine's Day. And we sold it out, which was awesome. Those are smaller houses anyway, but I actually reached out to Guillermo, and Guillermo was on set making Nightmare Alley, but he wrote me this really beautiful email that I read to the audience. And it was really just an appreciation of like, it really it hurt him that the movie was misunderstood when it first came out, but it thrills him that now audiences are finding it as it is meant to be found, which is again as a gothic romance.
Yeah, I think like that movie is really underrated, and I think you're right. Like a lot of people did not understand, but again, that's marketing. It came out at Halloween.
That was the market. Absolutely, they did that on purpose. The marketing department did that on purpose.
And I think that's part of the issue is that for most marketing departments, there just isn't another time for horror. Even though horror can come out any old time, but like if you really want to try to get it to hit with people, you have to put it out at Halloween, even if it doesn't. There's a vibe of Halloween movie. I don't know if I can really quantify this, but like the stuff I like to watch at Christmas time, let's say, is gloomy, sad, spooky, not necessarily like violent or not that there's no violence, but like not bloody, not gory, not like kind of fun horror. Like that doesn't really track. There are some fun Christmas horror movies, obviously, but like that doesn't. The vibe of Halloween is much more like playful and kind of
mischievous in a way.
Yeah. And there's nothing kind of playful or not nothing, but nothing really playful or mischievous about Crimson Peak. It's absolutely a romance set in a gothic like setting with ghosts that just happen to be there and stuff like that. And if you've watched any of his other like Spanish language movies, you kind of know that that's something he likes to play with anyway, is the sort of like the downtrodden nature of that kind of thing. And ghosts specifically. I think that's just a ghost thing. I think to properly do a ghost movie, there needs to be a huge degree of sadness involved, both for the character involved and for the haunted thing, whatever it is.
Well, and that's of course why, in theory, the ghost is sticking around, right? It is because it's either vengeance, it's sadness, it's something that is preventing this entity or this spirit from crossing over. And I was actually just looking up for your audience. So I know we're mostly focusing on movies, but I read in my book club last year this wonderful new short story. It is relatively new. It's like a novella, I suppose, but it's called The Christmas Guest by Peter Swanson. It's only 112 pages, and I think it was written in the last 10 years, but highly recommend. I read it last year. My dad had sent me some port wine, which is for the holidays, and it was chilly. So I opened my door to the porch, and then I turned on my little faux fireplace, and I sat in my recliner with my port wine and a Christmas chill, and I read it in one sitting, and it was so fun. And again, it's quite modern, but it evokes the type of tropes and structure that we are talking about that you would find in a British or Gothic sort of ghost story. I highly recommend. It's really fun. It's an easy read. Again, it's called The Christmas Guest by Peter Swanson. It's really fun, and I think it's Christmassy. So that's the other thing I like about it.
Well, yeah, I was just reading the because I'd not heard of it, so I'm adding it to my list. Toot Sweet, but like the premise is like this person is going home for the holiday, or going somewhere in
Yes.
the holidays, and going to the Cotswolds, which, if you know what the Cotswolds are, it's like old-timey villages that where modern people live. Like it's they set a lot of like early 1900s kind of like cozy mystery stuff in the Cotswolds, because it does have that vibe to it. And I was just realizing that like there, like what you were saying, going home for the holidays or like being around family and stuff like that, there's an element of like old traditional stuff
Yes.
um that happens around the holiday season that also is like part and parcel to ghosty stuff, where it's
Exactly.
like dredging up the past and stuff like that. That's see, we're making
Perfect
connections.
metaphor.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just sort of looking at my like little Christmas list, what I included here. I also, though, I will say, for some of my Christmas watches, I have now started to really try to bring in like alternative viewing, or like, for instance, an example that I like to give is The Conjuring 2.
Mhm.
So, The Conjuring 2 takes place at Christmas, and it's got a big Christmas tree. It's got a lot of old-timey English Christmas, songs on the radio, but it's not like, "Oh, we've gathered here because it's Christmas." No, the climax just happens to be set at Christmas, but
Mm.
also Christmas is everywhere in the visuals. And to me, that's like a fun alt, like, after I've watched Die Hard, It's a Wonderful Life, Scrooged, Muppet Christmas Carol, and Elf, and Love Actually if I'm feeling like it, then I gotta go, okay, now I'm getting into The Conjuring 2. Now it's time for Haunting of Hill House. Now it is time for Violent Night, which Violent Night, I don't know if you've seen it, but
I didn't see that. No.
okay. Well, Kyle,
All
you
right.
gotta add this to your list.
I'm
I
adding
mean,
to my list.
here's the thing though, it's like, it's my friend, and I have to be honest, full disclosure, my friend Josh Miller is the co-writer of Violent Night, and so I'm always cheering him on. But I love it. David Harbour as Santa, and it is Die Hard like in a house at Christmas. That is
Mm.
with Santa. Die Hard with Santa. That is what that's what this movie is. R-rated, really violent action movie comedy, but it's also, it hits all the Christmas tropes. It has Home Alone nods. It's just like, those are the types of things that, again, once I get through like 6 that are on a shelf, now I get to get into the weird, like, kind of fun counter programming.
Mm. I will definitely have to add that to my list. Have you seen, I'm sure you have, that, oh shoot, what is it actually called? Like it's a weird French movie from the early 90s that I will find the title of it. It is a very like Call Santa 999 or something like that.
Oh, no, I haven't
Call
actually
Saint
seen that
Nick.
one.
Oh, I need to find it. 99. What is this movie called?
I don't
Um
know. I
Pay.
am a big I do love, though, I love Black Christmas. I actually like most iterations of Bob Clark's Black Christmas is in my top 5 like horror movie. Actually, it's funny, if you go to the IndieGoGo campaign, you will see Black Christmas. It's like, I describe Fiendsgiving as You're Next and The Strangers, with the sense of humor and relationships of Bob Clark's Black Christmas. So
Mm.
that's like the little thing I'm swirling in, but I love Black Christmas, and I have a soft spot for the 2006 Black Xmas, which is just trash, and it's wonderful. They're very different, but I like the new Black Christmas too, in that I think it's a great gateway horror, PG-13 gateway horror movie.
Right. Yeah, Black Christmas is one of those that, like, the original, the Bob Clark one,
Yeah,
where like I saw it. It is one of the early like prototype slasher movies that came out in 1974, along with Texas
yeah.
Chainsaw Massacre. Both of those movies are so like bleak and not like, there's no fun in, well, there's no fun in Texas Chainsaw Massacre unless you are a sadist. But
Yes.
there's fun in Black Christmas, even though everything in it is so dire and terrible. It is not a, like, you have to be in the right mood for Black Christmas, I think. Like,
For sure.
it'll
And
bum
I
you
think
out.
the girls, honestly.
Yeah,
Like,
they're
that's
great.
sort of what I take away always. Black Christmas is incredibly dark, and if you've never seen it, I don't wanna say anything about it, with the exception of the girls and the relationships between the girls are hilarious. Like, Margot Kidder has never been funnier. She is a queen, and she's so good in that movie, and, of course, Olivia Hussey is so good too. But yeah, you're right, Kyle. Like, it's a bleak film for sure. And that's another reason why I kind of love it at Christmas time, because Christmas feels a little bleak to me.
Hmm.
But also, those girls love each other. And no
Yeah.
matter what happens to them, whatever the outcome is, their relationships, I think, are what makes it enjoyable.
Yeah, absolutely. And Margot Kidder rules in that movie.
She's
She's
so
so
good.
good. Okay, so the movie that I was talking about is
Okay.
called, well, the original is 3615 Code Father Christmas, uh, also known as also known as Dial Code Santa Claus. But I think ultimately it was released as just Deadly Games, which is a very silly title.
Oh,
But
okay. I'm adding this to my list now.
okay, so it came out in 1990, the same year as
Okay.
Home Alone. It is
Funny.
basically like Home Alone if it were Richie Rich's house and the person breaking in was a guy dressed like Santa Claus who straight up wanted to murder the people in the house.
Wow.
And so
This
it
is
is like,
great.
it's a really fun and wild movie, in the way that like only kind of French movies can be. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there clearly some money was spent on it. Like it looks amazing. And the house that they are in is huge, but like the kid has to defend his like um invalid grandpa against this murderous guy in a Santa Claus suit. And um he since his family is super rich, he has a ton of toys, and so he like basically sets all these crazy traps, but they're really elaborate and have like, and there's just many
Wow.
floors and stuff to play with and stuff like that. It's really fun. um but it's such a great mixture of like a few different kind of, sources. And actually the filmmaker of Deadly Games, Rennie Manzor, sued the makers of Home Alone because he was like, this is just the same movie. And I don't know, it doesn't say if he won or if was settled or anything like that, but like
Wow.
I think they were too close together in production for it to actually count. But like
Okay.
it's um
Kind of
but if you've seen
uncanny,
Home
it
Alone a
sounds
few
like.
times, a few too many times, I would say, and you want something similar but crazier, I would go with Deadly Games or Dial Code Santa
Well,
Claus.
that's one too that's very controversial is, Better Watch Out, which is on Shudder.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen that one, Kyle?
Yes, I have.
Okay, it's really divisive, and I actually fall on the side of do not like.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of people really love that movie, and it's kind of like what you're talking about, it where it if you've seen Home Alone, so have the filmmakers, and they're having fun with that, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, I also I think I fall on the side of didn't like it. Like the setup basically is like this babysitter has to protect a 12-year-old against people trying to get into this house. But then it takes
Yes.
turns that I'm like, we don't have need to get into, but like I just was like, I don't really care for this. Like
So we're talking about the same thing, because
yeah.
I want to be, I try very hard not to say like, oh, I didn't like this, or, talk about movies in a way that is like, negative, because it's so hard to make a movie.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
yeah.
try not to, whatever. But what I'm saying is, I guess, and I think we're saying the same thing, is that I didn't like it not because it is not a good movie. I just personally don't care for the twists and turns
Yes.
for different, for personal reasons, I suppose. And so yeah, but that said, for some people, those twists and turns are not an issue, and a lot of people really enjoy it, and it is a dark Christmas movie
Hmm.
that plays on sort of these pop culture tropes that now are sort of inextricable from Christmas. So in that way, it's something that the audience might enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally. And the fact that I think Shudder is sort of committing to making more, or at least distributing more Christmas horror movies, I think they kind of realized that there is a market for that, because there for a while you had just Black Christmas and then all the Silent Night, Deadly Night movies, which Silent
Yep.
Night, Deadly, I've only seen the first, I've seen a good amount of the second one because it's mostly the first one again.
Right.
But the first one really is like grimy to the point of I hate it. You know what I mean? Like, ugh.
Yeah, it's a lot. I have to say, New Beverly does a double feature of Black Christmas and Silent Night, Deadly Night every year. And I did go a couple of years ago, and I had never seen Silent Night, Deadly Night, and it's so funny. I remember sweet Elric Kane, filmmaker and
Yeah.
podcaster himself, was like, I don't know if this is going to be, because Elric used to always dress up in the Santa suit and come to the New Bev. That's what it was. And I think it was him that was like, I don't know if you're going to like this, Clarke. I don't know. And I was like, okay. And then I watched it at Silent Night, Deadly Night, and I loved it. But
Well,
to
that's
your
good.
point,
Yeah.
it was garbage. It's really
garbage. It's absolute
grimy.
garbage. Yeah.
But if you're seeing it on a double feature with Black Christmas and you're seeing it at the New Beverly with the exact right audience, that is sort of, I don't reach for that one every year, right? I like to watch it with a crowd that is like, this is a crazy movie and we're all about to experience it, versus like Black Christmas, I'll watch in like June,
Totally.
it's like that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's a level of like, and I obviously that movie was like super controversial when it came out, because just any depiction of Santa Claus or Christmas being scary or violent or anything like that at the time, that was Reagan's America and Thatcher's Britain. Like, there was no way anybody was gonna not complain about that stuff. But I do find it very funny that, like, it's not, it's garbage. Like, it's, and I say that with affection often.
Oh,
like,
same.
it's like,
yes, good trash. The Stephen King definition of good trash. Like, this is a compliment. This is not disparaging to the film or the filmmakers in that way. Yeah.
And I'm sure that they got way more attention because of the controversy, and therefore more people watching it. Because I only knew about it as a kid because I saw the trailer, not on television, but in a news report about it.
So I was consulted. There was a marketing company that was pitching on Terrifier 3 this year, and a friend of mine runs the company and doesn't really know anything about horror movies or didn't know anything about Terrifier. And so he came to me and was like, can I just pick your brain for a little while? And I was like, yeah, of course. And they didn't end up getting the campaign. But I told them, I was like, this is a Christmas movie. Like, do you realize Terrifier 3 has like Art the Clown as Santa? So you need to recreate this controversy immediately. You know what I'm like? You and I am sure it remains to be seen, because I have to. Terrifier is closing in on $100 million box office.
Incredible.
Which is incredible. Like, congratulations to that team. You all have done it. FIENDSGIVING hopes to follow in your footsteps one day. But yeah, like so as Thanksgiving kind of comes to a close, I am really hopeful that like we are going to get a digital or Blu-ray campaign that absolutely pitches Art the Clown as Santa. And I want to see parents screaming about Art the Clown as Santa. Nothing would make me happier. Like, it'd be so fun.
Absolutely. Gosh, that would be, I have a real, like, I appreciate those movies more than I actually enjoy them. Like,
same. Yeah.
But it's like, you cannot escape like that. They did a really good job of like marketing Art the Clown as an icon. Like, he's an icon now at this point. I think there's no way around it.
Absolutely. And like, again, hat is off to them. They deserve all of their success, because they have been at this for so long, and they have stayed true to who they are. They have stayed true to who that character is. They have stayed true to who their fans are, and they are reaping those rewards. And it is like, especially considering the climate that we are in with the industry right now, like that we talked about earlier in our conversation, like, again, I just cannot say enough good things about them. It's inspiring. Like, and I'm not being funny. Like, they are an inspiration to independent filmmakers and horror filmmakers. I take a lot of inspiration from them. Even if I don't like, the movies aren't my favorite movies in the whole wide world, it doesn't matter, Yeah.
And there's, but there's the Gorehound movies, which I think there's obviously a place for. And like, I'm not telling, making up any new stories here, but um, if you are into well done, very intense, very over the top gore sequences, you can't do much better than that. It's just I generally am not in those moods anymore. I think that's sort of my like um I'm trying to think of the goriest movie I've seen recently that I hadn't seen before,
The
but
the Substance, maybe? The Substance was pretty but
which
that's
I
not
haven't
even
seen. I
gore,
need to
it's
see The
like,
Substance.
oh, okay. It's just a lot of body stuff,
Yeah.
a lot of and it's, it's graphic, but there's a lot of ooky gooky, like, body stuff in The Substance, which is
Yeah.
really fun. I like that. Yeah.
Um have you, on the subject of Thanksgiving horror movies, because as we said, there aren't that many.
Yeah.
The other one that I could think of that I've actually seen a couple of times for various podcasts is Thanksgiving. And there's
I've never seen it.
it is it is, I won't even say good trash. It's kind of just trash, but it also just knows
Okay.
it's trash. It is
Yeah.
about an evil demonic turkey hand puppet
Oh my
that
god, amazing.
um attacks these kids and stuff like that, and it's so over the top and so stupid, but it also knows it's stupid, so I can't really be mad at it too much. Um but the turkey's voice is clearly just the director talking, and it's he's barely doing it, but it's trying to make it kind of Freddy Krueger-y, where he has quips and stuff like that. It's
Great.
so dumb, it's so funny,
Oh
but I've
god,
seen it,
that's
and it's
great.
only also 71 minutes or something like that. It's very short, so
Excellent. Snaps all the way.
yeah,
I will say, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I'll watch anything for 80 minutes. You know what I'm saying? Like,
absolutely.
we love an 80-minute movie. We love an 80-minute movie. More 80-minute movies, please.
Yeah, and it's definitely especially with horror, I think you run the risk of overstaying your welcome unless you have actual, I just yesterday, as we're recording this, saw Heretic, which I thought was great,
Oh yeah,
but
I
it
really
is
enjoyed it.
pretty close to 2 hours, and it's there's a world where there's a little too much kind of faffing about before we get to the stuff, but I do think it's super well done and everything like that. But that's an example of a movie that is almost overstaying its welcome and doesn't. And I think there are
Yep.
certain movies that go just on the other side of the line. And horror is the one where it's why are you doing this? You can do this in even 91 minutes. You don't need to create this whole crime, It just sort of depends on what you're wanting out of horror, but elevated horror, I think, has kind of ruined or actually just movies in general has sort of ruined the
Yeah.
ability to just make a short little movie.
So, it's interesting because we are on the topic of holiday horror movies. And while this is not a Christmas holiday horror movie I'm about to bring up, it is a holiday, and that's Midsommar. So
Right.
I just rewatched it. I saw it in the theater on the heels of a breakup where my boyfriend at the time clearly was not as invested as I was in the relationships, which is kind of the theme
Mhm.
of what's going on between our central couple in Midsommar. And so I watched it at the time. I saw it in the theater, and I was like, I like this. And I really like Ari Aster. I really like him. But what I will say is that when I rewatched it this week, I was like, yeah, I like this more this time around. And also, it's too long.
Yeah.
It's too long. And it is no disrespect to the artist's vision. It's just like, as you say, you don't want to overstay that welcome. And I would have really been able to appreciate the movie so much more if it was that moment. But then again, you could obviously make the argument that our main character, Danny, we are meant to be in her shoes, which means every moment of her existence is long and excruciating because
Right.
she is in that place of the grief of losing her family, of the separation, but her relationship falling apart. So as a filmmaker, I totally am I see you, Ari. I know what you're doing, and it is effective. But on the other hand, I wish it were just a little shorter because I think it would just be like another home run,
Yeah. Well, he also then went on to make Beau is Afraid, which I think is a travesty and bad.
And I haven't seen that one, and I will watch it because I am more interested in him as a filmmaker now that
I would
I've
be very,
rewatched
very
Midsommar.
fascinated to
But
hear what you think about it, because like there's a lot going on in it, and it's just about, it's like a hair under 3 hours long, and you just
yes,
kind of go
that's
like,
why I have not watched it.
Yeah.
That's exactly why.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
too long.
I would be very interested. It has nothing to do with holidays, but it is about going to see your mother, which is a big part of the holidays, and
Very
also
holiday.
guilt for not going to visit more.
Super holiday adjacent.
Very much so. I will say it's one of those movies where you get to the third act, and I literally went, "Oh, that's what you're doing," and it's like, Ari, you're working out some stuff, aren't you, bud?
Aren't we all?
Aren't
we all? Yeah, I wanted to ask you too, Kyle. Have you seen Anna and the Apocalypse?
I haven't. That should be on my list for sure.
It really
meant
should
to be on my list. Yeah.
It's British, and it's or maybe it's not Irish, or it's not Scottish. I think it's British, but either way, it's from the it's from over there, across the pond. But it's a musical, and it is horror, and it is Christmas. I will say though, the one thing that I will ding Anna and the Apocalypse on is that it's this wonderful Christmas movie. And yet, like, none of the songs are Christmas songs. And so they're just really good movie musical songs. There's one Christmas song that this gal sings at the Christmas pageant that is a double entendre filled, sexy, almost like Santa Baby. But she's a high school girl, and she's at the Christmas pageant, and she's singing this hypersexual, clever, very clever song, and it's so funny. And like, I remember seeing it in the theater and at the world premiere at Fantastic Fest, and I remember being like, this is so good. But unfortunately, that was the last song like that. Like, everything else is, again, just like movie musical songs. And I'm like, oh, they really did themselves a disservice by not writing some more Christmas music,
Totally. I haven't watched the video, so I can't attest to its quality or anything like that, or even the arguments that the person makes. But I was kind of just on YouTube looking for something else, and I saw a video come up in my recommendations that was, why is every Christmas song old? And it's like, I want to know the answer to that, because there were so many in the 40s.
Yeah.
So many.
Well, you know why? Do you know why?
I don't know why.
A lot of Christmas songs that were created in the 1940s were written by Jewish immigrants or Jews who were really grateful to be in America and assimilating and happy to be there. And so a lot of your favorite Christmas songs are written by Jewish songwriters. And it's this part of like Americana and American history that I think is really like, it's really kind of powerful if you know. But to your point, I think that's why we don't have a ton of new Christmas songs, because the ones that have stayed and like have that sticking power and become iconic are written from this place of celebration and gratitude. Whereas I think now Christmas is so commercial, and so it's like, for instance, one of my favorite new holiday songs, to be completely honest with you, is Adam Sandler's The Hanukkah Song. Every time he writes a new version of it, I add it to my holiday playlist, because it's just this so sincere, but also very rare. Like, we don't have a ton of Hanukkah songs.
Sure.
Bare Naked Ladies actually have a Christmas album or a holiday album, and they have one Hanukkah song that is actually really beautiful and about Hanukkah. But anyway, yeah, like I think it's that. I think it's just that everything is so commercial that it's hard to write a new Christmas song.
And you can see the kind of, we'll get to the top of the charts, baby. Like, you can see it in there. And like, you mentioned Love Actually earlier, and there's that whole thing where it's like, let's just re-record this very famous old song with Christmas lyrics, because especially in the UK, like Christmas songs, what's on the top of the charts at Christmas is incredibly important. That's maybe like the thing that is the highest selling song in all the year in the UK for some reason is the Christmas thing. The UK Christmas, if you've never been to Britain, even around
Ugh,
Christmas time, it is wild over there. Like they really
it's
go whole hog
beautiful.
into it. I do love it. I love it. I think it's a great way to do it. But they have this giant Hyde Park has like this giant German Christmas fair, and it's all
Oh, that's amazing.
like Bavarian style and stuff like that. It's really cool. But like we don't have stuff like that. I mean, I'm sure there are pockets here in the United States that do that, and there are places, but like somebody who lives in LA, it's like, well, there's the
The Grove.
Grove.
Yeah, exactly. It's the Grove,
The
which
end.
is kind of like there's a little bit like I like seeing the light up Santa
Sure.
like in the thing or whatever. I actually, you know what, I was thinking about my favorite new Christmas song, and it is written by Casey Musgraves. She has a Christmas album that came out a couple of years ago. Casey Musgraves, for your audience who may not know, she's like she comes out of Texas, is a country singer, but she's crossed over into more pop now, but she is like an old school country, kind of like old school Willie Nelson, old school Dolly Parton, like these Marty Robbins, like these kind of Texas influenced like storyteller country. But she has this song, so it's a combination of re-recording like older Christmas pop songs, but a couple of new ones. And she has a song called Christmas Makes Me Cry, and it is about the melancholy of Christmas. It is also about, but it's not like an overt, like you're not going to be like, it's not like a downer song, but it is melancholy. And it
Right.
also talks about like the passing of time, which of course, again, by the way, like that's what Christmas sort of used to symbolize, is like, okay, we gather at the end of a year, at the end of a calendar year. Some of us have not seen each other since this time last year. And when we come home as a family and we gather, and now, she has a line in the song where she says, Mom and Dad always get a little grayer, and so you see like the passage of time on your parents' faces, and like knowing that your family's not gonna be there forever, and those types of lessons of that, again, Christmas sort of is supposed to be about, if you're talking about it in the non sort of denominational kind of, we all celebrate Christmas, this is what we celebrate kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, highly recommend to your audience, if you're looking for like new Christmas songs, Casey Musgraves, her record is great, but that song Christmas Makes Me Cry is a really, really pretty new Christmas song.
Yeah. I full disclosure, dislike country music greatly.
Fair. Most people do. Or not most people, but a lot of people do.
Yeah. But it's there, you're absolutely right. Like you can be sad and also not like depressed, or I guess it's hard to say. Like it's like it's wistfulness. Like that's kind of what the holiday season is in that sense. This has nothing to do with horror movies. So
let's talk about some horror movies.
Let's talk about some horror movies. Now you had a whole list. Let's hit some of the things on your list.
Okay, what else is on my list? So, Krampus.
Oh yeah, Krampus. I love Krampus. I have a great time with Krampus. Yeah,
I do too. Mike, go ahead. Sorry,
I was just gonna say it harkens back to the first Gremlins, which is another horror adjacent Christmas movie. I think Krampus goes for it much more obviously than Gremlins does, but yeah, please,
yes,
yeah, it's such a great movie.
Mike Dougherty also, created, in my view, the best Halloween. Look, I know I'm going to upset some John Carpenter fans, but I will reach for Trick or Treat beyond. I will reach for Trick or Treat faster than I will reach for Michael Myers and John Carpenter and Deborah Hill's Halloween. They're different, apples and oranges,
Sure.
course. How about this? I'll say that I think I think that Mike Dougherty has made the best horror, and my favorite horror anthology, and that is Trick or Treat, but also a Halloween movie, in the way that most movies, like we were kind of talking about at Halloween, are not quote unquote Halloween movies, but Trick or Treat is a Halloween movie. So he really gets holidays, and Krampus, by the way, addresses sort of the commercial aspect, of course, but it also, and the greed, which is of course what Krampus is there to like spank you for. But also Krampus acknowledges like the family that hates each other and that like, why are we even doing this when we can't stand each other? Because society tells us we're supposed to. And so it's just like, I think there's a lot of really cool stuff going on in Krampus. My one thing is I actually wish it went further. I wish we got an R-rated cut of
Me
Krampus
too.
and got to see like the real horror play out the way that it plays out in Trick or Treat. But love Krampus.
Me too. There is, if you ever come to the legendary offices in the commissary on the floor that my office is at, there is an 8-foot tall Krampus like animatronic.
I love it.
It's just
I
there
love it.
all year long.
I
Actually,
love it. Great. Good.
but
He
yeah,
needs to be there, kind of like
Yeah.
I'm watching you.
yeah. But I love the way they like he has that version of Krampus. You never actually see its true face. It's hiding behind the veneer of like a Santa Claus mask or like
Yes.
skin that sort of looks like Santa Claus.
Yes.
I just thought the creature design on that thing was so cool, and the fact that like you
Same.
can see its hooved feet kind of running on the rooftops and stuff like that. Yeah, Krampus is great. If you get a chance to, or if you haven't seen Krampus yet, or I haven't watched it in a while, I would recommend it because it's a blast in that same way that Trick or Treat is, which is like there's a level of self-awareness about the holidays, sort of like the shittier parts of the holiday, but also gets to the heart of what those holidays are. And I think that's and the fact that like, we don't see it, but like it's not afraid to like do stuff to kids, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah. I mean, and that's the other thing that's kind of fun about, and missing is like naughty kids used to, it's like, don't be naughty kids, otherwise you're gonna get punished, and yeah, that's really fun. I have another weird one.
Okay,
That's
love it.
kind of like, so if Krampus is like, okay, that's a Christmas movie, but this is a movie that's set at Christmas. Very divisive horror movie, but I love it, and that is The Lodge. Have you seen The
I have
Lodge
seen
with
The
Riley
Lodge, yeah.
Keough? Takes place on Christmas, and man, that dad just leaves them kids with Riley Keough, and it's snowy, and it's in the middle of nowhere, and the palette is so gray,
Yeah.
and I just like, and also the emotional pressure of like, I'm your dad's girlfriend, you children are not mine, and here we are spending Christmas together. Like, that is an emotional, I love the setting of this. I love the sort of just the table is set for this wonderful thing. Again, not like a Christmas movie, but takes place at Christmas, which I always enjoy.
Yeah, that's a big part of it too, is sort of like the isolation. Like, if
Yes.
you even if you're not physically isolated in terms of like away from people or like snowed in or something like that. I've definitely been, I grew up in Colorado, so like we've had snowed in Christmases before.
Yeah.
But there's the kind of, well, the expectation is that you stick around inside with your family the entire week or whatever, and you just kind of go like, I am going. So there's the stir crazy aspect that I think The Lodge really gets to,
Absolutely.
and the awkwardness of like, we don't really know each other that well, and the one person that is tying us together is like not here anymore.
Yeah.
Not a Christmas movie at all, but a similar theme, a movie that's on Shudder that I watched fairly recently, which I liked. But it's called Daddy's Head. Have you seen that or heard of it?
I've started it, and then I was tired, so I was like, I'm gonna need to pay attention to this.
Yeah.
I gotta stop. Let's stop for a second. But I've heard really interesting things about it, and I know Sam Zimmerman was like really proud of that one, or excited about that one for the Shudder brand. So it's like at the top of my Shudder list. Yeah, but I haven't finished it yet.
Yeah, but that one, like the whole premise of that one is that this kid's father, who is engaged to this younger woman, he dies in a car accident, and then these two people have to like figure out how to live together, and also she's just like, I didn't actually want to be a mom, I was just in love with this guy, like all this stuff.
Yes.
Which makes it so much harder. And then of course there's weird folk horror elements to it because they're in the middle of nowhere and stuff like that. So but that absolutely, like the Lodge kind of thing. And there is something about, weirdly enough, because you don't see the opposite, and maybe there is one, where like it's the mother with a new boyfriend, and it's the boyfriend and the kids who have to like get along or something like that. There's something much more about these are not like this woman is not my mother kind of thing. And
Right.
like these children are not my kids. Like that works so much more, or like comes to the forefront more when it's a younger, you know, surrogate mother, and not a surrogate, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um,
well, because it's bucking that sort of deeply ingrained
right,
notion that women are inherently maternal,
right,
right? Your job is to be a mother. And for a lot of women, that is just simply not true.
right.
And so see, because how many times you don't necessarily look at a man as a prospective partner, and of course, some people are like, I would love for my kids to have a father. Like,
Sure.
yes, very normal reaction, but nobody is like, oh, well, he's not really paternal. It's like,
Yeah, no.
what? You know, like that's not a thing anybody says ever. So,
Yeah,
yeah, but you're right. That thing that is in our subconscious about moms and all of that is like unsettling. There's just there can be this unspoken conversation that is deeply unsettling about like, I don't know what to do with these kids, and I'm a girl, like, or I'm a woman, like, what? I don't know. And
yeah,
the audience, I think, immediately just goes, "Oh, that makes me uncomfortable," which is great. Great premise for a movie.
yeah. There was this is maybe a different topic entirely, but there was a span of movies there for like a decade where like sort of likened it to like the final girl grew up a little bit. So she
Yeah.
wasn't like a teenager, but she was like either a young mother or like a young would-be mother, like all this stuff. Like the Babadook's a good example,
Yep.
and also the movie Mama, which
Hmm. I
is
love Mama.
um but it's about like women becoming like not, you know what I mean? Like they're not girls who are the victims. They are
Sure.
like they're the central character, and they're also like trying to figure out, I got to save my kid, or I got to figure out what to do
Yes.
about motherhood as well as this evil monster thing or whatever. And I guess that's still kind of happening, but that's it. It definitely there for a while. It was the thing in horror movies, at least a good amount of them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I still like that premise a lot, you know. I think there's a lot to mine there.
Mm,
But I think now too culturally we're having more conversations about like the biology that goes into making children,
mm,
and because of laws, certain like trends around the world, whatever. And so I think that's more prevalent in horror right now. Is that idea, but then there's also, you know, this sort of trend of like they're women that are bucking their responsibility to become mothers, so like immaculate, and yeah, there's a lot of like birth, and there's a lot of baby horror right now, which is kind of funny, like the
yeah,
first Omen and Immaculate, and we tried to reboot Rosemary's Baby with Apartment 7A and those kinds of things, but like there's something going on and I think that I love the first Omen, so
I
I
did
will go to
too. I
bat for
really
that
loved
one.
it.
Like, I just think it's absolutely wonderful. And I will say I like what Immaculate was doing. So like, no disrespect. And also we don't have to choose. You can
They
have
literally
both.
both came out this year, so you can
Yes,
absolutely
they
watch them both.
did. Watch all or none of them. But yeah, I think that that's definitely kind of, people are playing around with that a little bit more right now.
That's an interesting, um, just kind of fun
Yeah,
trend in horror, I think.
sure is.
Um, I was just looking through some other like Christmas horror movies, and some of them are bad. There's a lot of like, you know, I haven't seen this one, but like Christmas, Bloody Christmas, and stuff like that, where it's just like Santa monsters and stuff like that. But do you remember the movie? This is many years old at this point, called Santa's Sleigh,
Yes, I do.
Slay, with
SLAY.
Bill
Yes,
Goldberg.
I do.
Um, that was not a good movie, but I remember thinking it was stupid, silly fun. But then you get stuff like Rare Exports, which is actually pretty scary, and
Yeah.
also about like the folklore aspect of Christmas, which does get lost a lot in the like our neck of the woods.
Agreed, and I remember watching, Rare Exports for the first time after hearing for years that it was a Krampus movie, and then I watched it and I was like, "This is not a Krampus movie." I
No,
mean, so for our audience, like, if you're listening and you're like, "Oh, yeah, I've heard of Rare," I really enjoyed Rare Exports, but just don't get your expectations twisted like I did. That is not a Krampus movie.
no.
Um I also I would be remiss if I didn't mention my buddy Michael Kennedy wrote a movie called It's a Wonderful Knife that came out last year. And it's just fun, a fun slasher movie, but really does also play like it's basically It's a Wonderful Life, but a slasher movie. So it really is playing in the pop culture that Christmas inhabits, not only with, It's a Wonderful Life and those pop culture references, but also with the iconography. The angel is is the mask of the killer,
Mm.
and so on. So like that's fun, like straight on holiday slasher. Really really fun.
You know, and you're the perfect person to ask because you're about to do one. But like,
Yes.
and maybe it is just from Black Christmas and Halloween, but like, and obviously there were a lot of like 80s like April
Mhm.
Fool's Day, and then like in the early 2000s there was Valentine's Day or Valentine. But like,
Yeah.
what do you think it is it about the slasher movie specifically and its connection to holidays? Like,
Yeah.
why that over something else? Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do. I think it is because, speaking in just completely candidly, I think it's because people don't take slasher movies seriously.
Mm,
And so if you're going to be like, you take an exorcism movie seriously, right?
mm,
You can take a ghost story or a supernatural haunting seriously. But people don't take slasher movies seriously. So the concept of like, okay, yeah, let's just mash it up with a random holiday. Like, sure, the kids will love it. Like, I think but then I think of people like my friend Michael, who wrote It's a Wonderful Knife, and who also wrote the movie Heart Eyes, which comes out this Valentine's Day, which is a Valentine's Day slasher movie,
mm.
who really do take slasher movies seriously. So I just want to be clear, like, fans take them seriously and
100%.
the
Yeah.
creators take them seriously. But in terms of financing, I really think it's that. I think it's
Mm,
just like, okay, let's have, and also slasher movies are very gimmick based
right.
in
Right.
that the killer kills you a certain way, they wear a certain mask, they kill at a certain time of day or a certain day of the year or whatever it is. So otherwise it'd just be a serial killer movie, right?
Right.
So that's what I think it is. And I think that and also I think there's just, with a slasher movie, there is an element of disbelief in that we're creating an icon or a figure, even if it's something like Scream that is set in the very grounded real world, meaning like there's no supernatural element
Hmm.
to Ghostface, whereas like there's a supernatural element to Friday the 13th, Halloween, and so on. But I think that so if you're going to ask your audience to like suspend disbelief a little bit, I think it's also you might as well just add a holiday on there too. Like, what's the why? It's kind of like Scooby Doo. Like, there's no they have to have a reason. Okay, like,
Yeah.
and so that's my take.
I bet you, I'm sure you're right. Like, I think
Sure, there are a lot of reasons, but that's
right.
just my opinion.
But like what we've been talking about, like ghosts seem like something that could act, like really
Yes,
benefit from like a holiday themed thing. But I wonder too if it's like, well, A Christmas Carol is that. And so
exactly,
anything with ghosts at Christmas time, people are going to be like, is this like the Christmas Carol? And like,
exactly.
so yeah, I guess I had never really thought about it. And I know it was just like, you know, after Halloween, Friday the 13th, and then My Bloody Valentine, and like all these
Yeah.
movies, um, many of which I actually really like.
Oh,
Um,
same. Yeah.
but yeah, I just find it so funny that like they are gimmick based, yeah, and like most holidays have a thing, and like even April Fool's Day, which you can maybe guess what that movie is going to be before you see it.
Yeah.
Um, I think that kind of thing is really interesting, and I think maybe the Silent Night, Deadly Night of it all sort of um ended that for a period of time, uh,
I
and
think
then
I think that's the other thing too, is that slasher movies really fell out of favor because they
yeah,
were just so overdone until Scream brought them back for a minute. But then, of course, also kind of fell out of favor. And then it's been franchises, and then it's been the creators who are like, but I have an original slasher movie. I want to make a slasher movie. No one is like telling me I have to. And also, I don't want to put my slasher movie in a sequel box. You know what I'm saying? So like, can I please make an original one? And now I think we're getting those opportunities a little bit more in the last, 5-ish years. But they were out of favor for a long time. And I'm kind of happy to see them back in a way.
Yeah. And people are getting so creative with like, because obviously
Yes.
you need your slasher killer to look memorable. So you go, oh, that's the one guy from that. It can't just be,
Yes.
what is it? Friday the 13th part 2. It's memorable because of how dumb he looks. He's literally just got a bag on his head.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be any number of things, but like, yeah, the ghost face mask, or like, the Michael Myers mask. But even, in a Violent Nature, which we talked about many times at this point, like that weird, like diving mask or whatever it is, like that is a specific look that evokes that particular thing. So I'm assuming you'll have a certain thing in Fiendsgiving, which you don't need to give
Audience,
away
I
now,
can tease. I will not give it away now,
Yeah.
but I can tell you that one of the most fun creative moments I felt like I've had as an artist in any way or any creative was the lightning bolt of what the gobbler needed to look like. It was really fun, and we're keeping it a secret. But yes, if you can help us get this funded, I think that the crowd is going to be really happy with the gobbler and how they look. So please help us reach our goal, because I would love nothing more than to let the audience see what the gobbler is supposed to look like.
And I would love nothing more than to see whoever that person is that's going to play that character and all that stuff. And yeah, I feel like that's a decent place to wrap up our very meandery, as always, conversations. So once again, plug that. I mean, you said it was IndieGoGo, but how can people find your Kickstarter, or not Kickstarter? How can people find your crowdfunding campaign and support?
It really is like the Kleenex brand, kind of Kleenex versus tissue.
Yeah.
I totally get it. Yes. Well, if you go to IndieGoGo, you can type in FIENDSGIVING, FIENDS giving, and we're there. Or you can follow me on any social media platform at Clarke Wolfe, Clarke with an E, Wolf with an E, and there will be links there. Of course, Sam Levine, Sam with 2 M's, is also on social, and it will be linked to his accounts as well. So if you look up me or Sam, you'll find us, or you can just go to IndieGoGo and type in Fiendsgiving and we'll be there.
Absolutely. Clarke, thank you again for being on the show on another holiday. You'll have to come on, I don't know, Arbor Day, other day.
Sign me up.
But yeah, thank you all for listening. Hope you all have a very nice and happy Thanksgiving. If you are celebrating it, hopefully you are having a nice time and not a fraught time. But if you are, give yourself the kindness of taking a moment if you need it, and just realize that, like, yeah, there's a bunch of people like you out there. I often feel like, or felt that, like, everyone loves the holidays and I don't, and I'm the bad one, and because that's what media tells you a million times, but you're not. You're normal. And it's okay.
Yep.
So yeah, please follow me on Blue Sky. I'm there now.
Woo!
Kyle D. Anderson. You can also follow me at Letterboxd Kyle _Anderson. Whatever, it's fine. And yeah, we will be back next week on Laser Focus when my guest will be a different person. Bye-bye. Laser Focus is a production of Nerdist Industries and Legendary Digital Networks. It was produced, edited, and hosted by me, Kyle Anderson. For more, visit Nerdist.com.